Hey, I'm Randy, and you're watching The Cheap Audio Man. Here at The Cheap Audio Man, we talk about high-value, hi-fi, home theater, and headphone equipment. And today, we're talking about the Schiit. We're having a little bit of a Schiit shootout. The Vidar versus the Aegir. So, grab a cup of coffee, sit down, and let's talk about the Schiit Aegir versus the Schiit Vidar. So instead of having an idiotic fake sponsor, I'm going to talk about some music. And I'm going to talk about some music that one of my wonderful patrons, Mark C., sent me. Not only did he send me a whole bunch of CDs, he curated the CDs and he wrote little notes, little liner notes. And I took the notes and I put them inside the cover. So this is David Bowie, The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. A lot of people are probably familiar with this album. I'm going to read what Mark wrote. Respectively, Ziggy Stardust is considered one of Bowie's best works, one of the best glam rock albums, and has appeared on numerous lists of the greatest albums of all time. Bowie had ideas for a musical based on the album, although the project never came to fruition. Ideas were later used for his 1974 album, Diamond Dogs. The album has been reissued, this one, several times and remastered in 2012 for its 40th anniversary. In 2017, it was selected for preservation in the National Recording Registry, being deemed culturally, historically, and artistically significant by the Library of Congress. David Bowie, Ziggy Stardust. Very awesome. This is not normally the type of music I would listen to, and I put it on and I listen to it, and it's fantastic. And I love that my patrons have introduced me to some music that I probably never would have listened to had it not been for them. So thank you, Mark. Awesome record. Check it out if you haven't listened to it. So let's talk some specifications. Vidar, $700. Yep, $700. Back ordered, it says, for 6 to 8 weeks. But oftentimes things ship a little bit sooner from Schiit. Power ratings, 8 ohms, 100 watts. 4 ohms, 200 watts. In mono, 400 watts into 8. Doesn't give a 4 ohm rating for running mono. So I don't know. If you do know, because the Aegir doesn't either. If you do know if you can run 4 ohm loads when these things are in mono, drop it down in the comments. I reached out to Schiit, but it's probably going to take a while for them to get back with the holidays and everything. If you want to read up about the distortion and any other stuff, I'll link everything in the description so you can check out if you want more specifications. The Aegir, or Aegir, however you want to say it, 20 watts, rated at 20 watts into 8 ohms, 40 watts into 4 ohms, and 80 watts in mono at 8 ohms. Again, I don't know if you can run a 4 ohm load when you're running these things in mono. So the difference here is the Vidar is a Class AB. The Aegir is a Class A, kind of. The first 10 watts are Class A, and the last 10 watts are continuity. So, and I may not be getting all these details right, but the Aegir acts like a Class A amplifier. Runs hot. They both run a little bit warm, but they have huge heat sinks on the side. These things are built so wonderfully. And their styling is so cool. They have the vents on the front, vents on the top. I just love the way that sounds. On the back, it's pretty simple. You have some RCA connections, a single XLR connection, some speaker outs, and then IEC power. Fairly simple. These are just power amps. So no volume control, no Bluetooth, no nothing. Power amp. You have to hook this up to either a preamp or a DAC or something that has a variable voltage out so you can control the volume on these. The rest of the gear I was using when I was listening to these critically was the ELAC Unify 2.0, probably my reference speaker. I know that speaker very well. It has a very neutral presentation, a little bit harder to drive, not the easiest load to drive, but it's a great speaker, very flat frequency response, and I know it well. I ran an Oppo Blu-ray player into a Denafreps Aries 2 DAC into the Freya S preamp, and the Freya S has 2 RCA outputs, so I could run an RCA into both of these. Then I used a little amplifier switcher. So I ran all the speaker cables into the amp switcher thing, and then the main speaker cables out of it, so I could just A/B. back and forth. Now those levels were quite a bit different when I did switch, so I had to adjust the volume. Is that the best way to do an amp comparison? Absolutely not, because I didn't have levels matched perfectly. But there's enough difference in sound that I don't think it mattered much that they weren't completely perfectly level matched. Now, I don't have any other Class A or Class A type amplifiers. The amps I have in-house are the Emotiva XPA Gen 3. It's a big power amp. I have the Vista Audio Spark, which is basically a power amp that has volume controls. I have the Akatika GT101 or 102. It's a power amp. It's the 4 ohm rated one. So power ratings are all over the map. The XPA, the Emotiva XPA Gen 3 is probably the most obvious comparison to the Vidar because they have similar power ratings. The reason why I compared the Vidar and the Aegir is because, well, they're from the same company. They're similarly priced. There's only $100 difference. So the Vidar is $100 cheaper than the Aegir. And, well, that's how I do reviews. Because I can't just listen to a product and then comment on it. I always have to compare a product to something else. So I have a reference point. I'm not a great reviewer. Some people can just listen to a piece of equipment and talk about it. I've got to listen to a piece of equipment and then listen to another piece of equipment and then talk about the differences. Let's get this out of the way at the beginning. These both sound fantastic. They sound quite a bit different, and I think even to a layman they're going to hear differences. I think these are different tools for different jobs, and I think they should be paired up with different types of speakers. Now, the Vidar can pretty much do everything that Aegir does as far as powering speakers. Which one of these amps you choose is going to come down to what type of speakers you have and what your preference is. And I know that's somewhat of an obvious statement, but these really do sound quite a bit different. This probably isn't going to surprise a ton of people, but the Aegir has a warmer presentation in the mid-range and a little bit more of a relaxed presentation when it comes to detail retrieval. However, the top end, I'm talking top, so cymbal crashes, sounded almost identical to the Vidar. But when I switched to the Vidar, the overall treble response just came up. It was like the top is the same, and then when I switched to the Vidar, it just brought everything up. Not in a bad way, not in a fatiguing way, but it was pretty obvious when I switched over to the Vidar that, oh, there's the rest of the treble. As far as bass control, I thought the Vidar was way tighter and controlled the bass way better. However, the Aegir concentrated on the lower mids, upper bass, and gave it a very full sound. But as far as bass slam, Vidar walk away winner here, and that could be different depending upon the sensitivity of your speakers. So the bass punch on a speaker that has a higher efficiency could really be there with the Aegir. But on the Unify 2.0s, the Vidar gave you a much stronger punch in the face, like a 32-year-old farmer when you said something bad about him when you're hauling bales together, hay bales, alfalfa bales. Alfalfa's heavier than hay. The Aegir is kind of I'm not saying a strange animal, it's just a different animal. Upper bass, lower mids, then it starts to kind of smooth out in the upper mids, and then it's kind of smooth, and then all of a sudden it gets very detailed on the top end of the treble. So kind of a like that. The concentration of this amp was just in those areas. The Vidar is just kind of it gets you. It doesn't have anywhere near the laid-back presentation or the warm mids, the warm vocals. It's a little bit more exacting with the way that with the way that it presents the music. The Aegir is what I wish tube amps sounded like. Just laid back, concentrates kind of in the middle part, still has detail on top, but a more relaxed presentation. Pulls you in. Kind of makes you want to lean forward, where the Vidar kind of makes you, whoa, it's a bit aggressive, makes you want to lean back a little bit. So, shocking, I used the Metallica Black album, the remastered version that came out in September. I used that through the Oppo DVD player. And don't get me wrong, they both sounded incredible, and I could live with either one of these amps. But there's a track on there, I think it's track number 10, The God That Failed. It starts off with a little bass line. Real nice, back when Jason Newsted used to play the bass. Not saying that Robert Trujillo is not a great bass player. I love them. But Jason Newsted was pretty cool. He used to do a lot of singing. There were some songs that Jason Newsted would sing the entire thing. He's a really good vocalist too. I wish that they would bring him back, maybe do some type of reunion thing or something. It would be cool. So, The God That Failed. The bass line just seemed richer. Less detailed, but richer, more present, more organic than the Vidar. But the Vidar, more aggressive. And while the Aegir, I think, concentrates more on the lower mids, the Vidar gave a more visceral presentation. That could be due to power, it could be due to just the characteristics of how they sound. But I heard and I enjoyed the music through the Aegir, where I felt the music through the Vidar. And this was at similar levels, or at least levels that I tried to match it to. And then the snare drum. So the snare drum was way more pronounced. That was way more pronounced on the Vidar. The whole top end was just lifted on the Vidar. A lot cleaner, a lot clearer. Still sounded great on the Aegir. We're just talking about differences, or I'm talking about the differences that I heard. To me, both of these amps are yummy. And I think they're high value. And $700 and $800 sounds expensive, but to me, this is kind of a destination. This is what most people can strive toward. This isn't out of line for most people. Most people could save up $700 or $800 and get one of these amps. And then run 2-channel, and if you ever need more power, add another one if they'll cooperate with your speakers. Like I said, if anybody knows if you can run 4-ohm loads mono through these, drop it in the comments. So they're both awesome. They're both great. They're both but they're both for different purposes, or different moods at least, or different speakers. Obviously the Aegir is going to pair better with speakers that have a higher efficiency. And I think some of that bass control will come back with higher efficient speakers. I will say this though, that when I had the ELAC Unify 2.0 on the Vista Audio Spark, which again is a 20 watt per channel amplifier, the Aegir did way better with bass control. The Vista Audio Spark could not handle the ELAC Unify 2.0. The Aegir did fine. The Vidar did better with bass control, slam, impact. But the Aegir wasn't embarrassed at all, and frankly did way better than the Vista Audio Spark. And I like the Vista Audio Spark. Even though this is only 20 watts, it does a much better job than the Vista Audio Spark, with harder to drive speakers, or speakers that need a little bit more juice, gumption. At the end of the day, which one you choose is going to be up to you, and what your preference is. I like them both. If I could only choose one, I'm choosing the Vidar because I like a bit of a more aggressive presentation. However, I have not found a tube amp that I love, and the Aegir gives me everything I want a tube amp to give me, but more power and a cleaner sound signature. So if you're in a tubey mood, but you don't want to mess with changing out tubes, maybe get the Aegir. I know, weird, right? Overall, I don't think you can go wrong if you know what you're getting yourself into, if you know what type of sound signature you're looking for, and what type of characteristics your speakers have. More lively speakers, Aegir could really bring those things together and make it very cohesive sound signature. I love them both. My preference, personal preference here, is the Vidar. But don't take that as I'm saying the Vidar is better. The Vidar is better for me, not necessarily for you. So if you want to support the channel, you can sign up for Patreon, patreon.com/cheapaudioman. Every Sunday night we do patron-only Zooms. We also have a patron-only Facebook group. You can also buy a Rocktopus mug. Or, actually, no, I don't have an affiliate relationship with Schiit. So if you buy one of these, I'm not getting anything. It doesn't matter. They're both great. I think they're fairly priced. I think they're high value. And I think they're fantastic. And it's going to give anyone some joy if they choose to get them. You can sign up for Amazon Music, though. Click on the link. You get a few months for free. I get a couple of dollars. So don't binge watch anything on Netflix or Hulu unless it's Boba Fett, which is coming out, I think, tomorrow. Or The Expanse on Amazon Prime. That's really good. Steve Z turned me on to that one. So don't binge watch anything unless it's those. Binge listen through your Schiit, Aegir, or Vidar and fill your soul with happiness. And with that, I'm Randy. I'm the Cheap Audio Man.